housekeeping first. There are two sessions tonight. Okay, the first session is a general HIPAA introduction, because of the background of HIPAA and things it covers, and some examples about what goes wrong when you don't comply with HIPAA. And then the second session is the actual awareness training. Now, you might have noticed we put some forms in front of you. There are 2 pages, front and back. These are the actual questions that form the HIPAA awareness training exam. Our objective with this exam is not to see how well you take tests. Our objective is to see how well you understand the material. So take a look at those questions if you haven't already. I may emphasize certain screens and let you know that it's something you should pay attention to on this exam, and I'm probably going to repeat the information on it for anything that's on that questionnaire, because the objective again is for you to be able to equate what I'm telling you with what's essential for you to know in HIPAA awareness. If you would all be kind enough, if you have cell phones, if you'd be kind enough to turn them off, that would be helpful. There are no bathroom breaks for the next 3 hours. Okay, just kidding. We will have a short break between the 2 sessions for about 10 minutes, and then I'll let you know, and then we'll go on from there. When the second session is over, that's when we've got to complete the form, answer the questions. Please be very legible with the way that you complete your names on these forms, because we're going to use these forms to eventually prepare a certificate that shows that you've met your obligation for HIPAA awareness training for this year, and you pay tax and that you would have your name misspelled. Okay, and at the very least, make sure you get a phone number in case we're not sure, so we can contact you, because we want to get it right the first time. There will be time for questions at the end of each session. As I'm going along, if you have a quick question, that's great. If you have a question that relates to something in particular to your practice, something that maybe you came across and so on, please reserve that for the end or see me after the sessions, and I'll be happy to answer that. Any questions so far? Okay, why don't we just get going then? First, I want to start off with a quick poll. How many of you strive to maintain patient loyalty? How many in your practice believe that patient loyalty is essential to your practice and the security of your jobs? But we all agree that that's important? Okay. All right. How many of you believe that your practice is essentially HIPAA compliant? Maybe you can raise your hands if you think that your practice is HIPAA compliant. Okay. How many of you have completed a written risk analysis, adopted a compliance plan, obtained business associate agreements from your vendors, and have appointed a HIPAA compliance officer? Let's do that show of hands again. Okay, very good. So if you haven't taken these steps, and there are other steps as well, but if you haven't at least taken these steps, you're not HIPAA compliant. You may think you are, and you're joining the overwhelming majority of covered entities out there, providers of healthcare, who believe that they are, and they honestly have taken steps that they believe put them in a position of being compliant with HIPAA. It's not because they don't want to be compliant with HIPAA, it's because no one's ever explained to them what has to be done in order to be compliant. Have any of you heard of the Poneman Institute? Poneman Institute is the leading national HIPAA research organization in the country. It's actually owned by a physician who was so enamored with HIPAA that he decided to form this research bank, and his studies of that organization, it's a large organization now, are frequently quoted as the source for HIPAA information. They polled 700 small healthcare providers about their HIPAA experiences just in the year 2012. Now, these 700 small healthcare providers, the overwhelming majority, I forget the exact percentage, I believe it's 97 or 98% of practicing physicians who have, they say, anywhere from 10 to 250 employees. But 90% were under 40 employees, 85% were under 20 employees. So it's representative information. 91% of those polled suffered a breach in 2012 alone. Isn't that amazing? I was blown away by that percentage. Now, these are the participants who are reporting it. It's not someone else who's making it up. They're asked whether they had a breach. 53% of those breaches resulted from a lack of training and awareness. Does everybody know what I mean when I say breach? It means that basically protected health information of one of their patients or more was shared without authorization. Okay? So 53% of those instances resulted from a lack of training and awareness in the opinion of the survey takers. 49% of those breaches involved inadequate procedures and controls by their own estimation. 49% of breaches were ascribed to negligence, meaning that they knew there was a risk of exposure of that information and either never got around or chose to ignore taking steps to protect the information. 30% of the breaches resulted in loss of patient business. That's amazing. Think about it. Remember our first question that we had up there? How many of you believe that patient loyalty is important to the security of your practice? And here we have 37% of breaches resulted in loss of patient business. So no matter how hard you work to establish your reputation, a breach can result in loss of patients. That's the conclusion. So it's not only a matter of complying with government regulations, it's not only a matter of avoiding expensive lawsuits and the interruption and the embarrassment of having a patient say, gee, I didn't authorize you to give that information. It has a real concrete effect, potentially, on your own job security and security of your practice. So what is HIPAA? HIPAA stands for the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act of 1996. They were first passed in 1996 and have been consistently amended and strengthened every year since. In fact, it doesn't matter what administration holds the control of Congress, doesn't matter what party has the president in place. Every single year when there have been HIPAA laws, they have increased the requirements for HIPAA and increased the penalties for not complying as opposed to lessening things. So HIPAA is here to stay. And in fact, we're going to talk a little bit later about the latest iteration of HIPAA laws that took place in 2013. And you'll see just how much they continue to tighten this up. So the requirements are going to be greater and more, and the lack of compliance will become more severe. Originally, when HIPAA was passed, the goal was not protecting information. The goal was to make sure that insurance would be portable from one plan to the next. It was very successful within a relatively short period of time in assuring that. And so that goal was met. And slow but sure, the purpose of HIPAA became more to protect health information of patients, private information, than anything else. With the omnibus rule recently enacted, they even applied to the subcontractors of business associates. Those are terms we're going to explain a little bit later. Covered entities, business associates, and subcontractors, important terms to know. Just keep in the back of your mind at this point. The evolution of HIPAA. Now I mentioned pretty much every year there have been changes to the HIPAA laws, and yet there are still two bodies of laws that were passed in 2 years that are really considered critical to HIPAA compliance. The first is the HITECH Act of 2009. Many of you probably heard the term high-tech. Well, the HITECH Act, this is way oversimplified. It covers a wide range of issues and topics and so on. But three of the most important elements of the HITECH Act of 2009 were that first, it greatly enhanced security requirements for electronic PHI. PHI is protected health information. Now, the reason it was part of 2009 is back in 1996. Think about what you were doing to keep records of your patient interaction. There wasn't anywhere near the level of technology existing in 1996 as there is in 2013 and 14, correct? A lot of records were still manual. Many people weren't using practice management software at that point. All kinds of different conditions existed. And Congress and the Office of Civil Rights, working under Health and Human Services, determined that the laws that were issued up to the point of the HITECH Act of 2009 were not adequate, and that they didn't address security issues that were just growing exponentially because of computer technology. So it greatly enhanced the security requirements for electronic records. It subjected business associates to HIPAA. Now what that means is that not only are you, as a provider, responsible financially and otherwise for the information of your patients, but anyone that you hire who then has access to that information has to comply with HIPAA, and if they don't and there's a breach, you are liable as the covered entity. And then it sharply increased penalties for violations. We're going to talk about in detail about the penalties in a little bit. The HIPAA omnibus rules of 2013 subjected subcontractors to HIPAA. Now think of it this way. Business associates are the people that you hire who have access to your patient information. Subcontractors are the business associates of the business associates. Okay? So if you've got a business associate and they in turn hire someone else who then has access to your patient information, then they fall under HIPAA just as the business associates did, and you share responsibility. It also increased patient rights, and it sharply increased penalties of violations. Notice a little trend, sharply increased penalties? The penalties are ridiculous now. Understanding all of the new HIPAA omnibus rules is like torture, or as I call it, 50 Shades of Grey. This is an important thing to remember about HIPAA. We constantly get questions from clients and prospects about particular instances, and they say, well, how do I do this? Or what's an acceptable software for HIPAA compliance? Or what should I be using to encrypt email? Or any number of questions where they're looking for specific direction from HIPAA rules, but you'll never find it. HIPAA was designed to be intentionally vague. It was designed to be to apply to such a wide number of circumstances that the government felt it would be wrong and would complicate things to be too specific. What the HIPAA rules say is, look, we're going to tell you what we expect. Now, how you go about it is up to you. And we want you then to demonstrate to us that the method that you took to go about it made sense to you, that you thought about it, you gave it thought, you recognized where the risk existed, you determined what policies and procedures created that risk, and you made a judgment as to what steps you would take to minimize that risk. So they want to see a process involved there. Because of that, they recognized also that the HIPAA laws had to allow for a certain amount of flexibility. The requirements of a practice that has 100 physicians is different from a practice with one physician. Someone who's got, in a secure building is different from someone who's not. So they created a practicality aspect, and they said, look, yes, these rules require you to think about it, and it requires you to make a call about what steps you're going to take. And if you look at those steps and you can honestly say that they make no sense for your business, we could do this, but the risk is minimal, and it's not practical for us to change it. As long as you make a case, you comply with HIPAA. Now, you have to use it judiciously, but there is a flexibility built in. This next slide is kind of important. What does HIPAA what does HIPAA include? Well, HIPAA laws focus on two major areas. First is privacy. Privacy refers to what is protected, and that's personal health information, PHI, more often referred to as protected health information, and the determination of who is permitted to access it, who can use it, and who can disclose it. So privacy refers to what and who. Security refers to how it's safeguarded and sets national standards for protecting PHI from inappropriate or accidental disclosure, destruction, or loss. Now, remember we talked about the HITECH Act, and one of the main components of the HITECH Act was that it added security standards, right? So now what's happened is a lot of people say, well, okay, the security aspect of HIPAA must only apply to electronics, to computer technology and the information that's related to it. Not so. Security also includes things like physical safeguards of that data. We're actually going to delve into a number of areas where there are non-technology related security requirements for complying with HIPAA. Who must comply with HIPAA laws? Well, these are important terms to know. Covered entities. Now, this is one of the areas where it is very specific in HIPAA law, where they say a covered entity is a health plan or a healthcare clearinghouse, but we don't care about that, and healthcare providers who electronically transmit any health information in connection with transactions that concern billing or payment for services or insurance coverage. Now, for most people, that's going to cover pretty much everybody. All right, so if you're a healthcare provider and you receive any information that is related to providing that care to an individual, you are a covered entity. You're required to comply with HIPAA. Business associate is a person or entity who is hired by a covered entity for any activity involving the use and disclosure of individually identifiable health information that is regulated by HIPAA laws. First question is, what is that last statement? We're going to actually identify what this health information consists of. And then, as I mentioned, subcontractors are people hired by a business associate. I heard the new HIPAA omnibus rules are a whole lot tougher on business associates. Very, very true.